Hey, lovies. Welcome back to the Man Cave for episode 63 of the ManTFup podcast. I'm Kimmy B.
And Lenny.
That's right. Now, before we go any further, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow absolutely everywhere. As far as the podcast goes, you can find us on all podcast platforms, social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. We love your comments. We love it when you engage. We love it when you drop us ideas for new segments or, future podcasts. But Len, let's just jump right into it. You sent me a couple of clips, as we were prepping for this week's episode. And considering we are headed into, obviously, an election year, we live in one of the most, quote unquote, anti-woke, I would say, states in the good old US of A. We are no strangers. I point those things out because we are no strangers to discussing, LGBTQIA plus issues on this podcast, in particular, issues that have kind of confronted the trans community as of late. A good friend of the podcast, Misty Alisea, has been on with us, multiple times. She's incredible, and she's a trans advocate. But the clips that you sent me, I thought were really, they were poignant, and I think that they kind of share or shine a different light on some of the issues that I think are only going to become more and more prevalent, unfortunately, especially as we get closer to the 2024 election, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It is what it is. Obviously, we have discussed on this podcast with numerous guests, Leah Thomas, the UPenn swimmer, who was,
a dude.
Originally part of the men's swimming team, and then decided to take, 18 months off, went on hormone therapy, and came back as a transgender member of the women's swim team. Leah went on to actually win the NC2A championship in the 500-meter freestyle as a transgender female athlete. When she had competed as a man, she certainly did not have the same prowess in the pool, let's say. Obviously, a great athlete, you don't get a D1 scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania unless you are a pretty phenomenal athlete, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you don't last 3 years on your team if you're not a pretty phenomenal athlete. But as far as like national rankings go, when Leah was competing as a man, she certainly wasn't winning medals. She wasn't standing on the podium. As a female, the story was very much different. And of course, that catapulted her into the spotlight, in a positive way in some circles and in a very negative way in others. But it definitely brought to the forefront of the conversation the whole discussion of whether or not, transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in
female
sports in general. Well, I just love how you guys pinpoint female sports. They're not banning it only in female sports. So
no,
if they ban
that's
them from
fine,
competing,
but I don't see a female swimmer switching to male and dominating the male swimming.
She may not dominate, but they definitely,
or the basketball court,
but they
or
definitely,
the soccer field.
There's definitely some women that could go toe to toe with men on a basketball court, and there are male basketball players that play in the NBA that will tell you that. An overwhelming majority of them, no. But when you get to a certain level in certain sports, you can definitely play with the boys. I would say that about golf. I would say that about certain, especially individual sports. But that's not what we're talking about. We're specifically talking about, different sports organizations and the decisions that are being made more and more frequently now as to whether or not they're going to allow transgender athletes to compete. And that's across the board. That's whether you're trans female or trans male. But this was a clip that came out, and I don't know if it appears that the person in the clip is testifying in front of Congress, which is very possible, but she's definitely speaking somewhere. And I believe she was a member or a former member of the UPenn women's swimming team, and actually had the opportunity to swim with Leah. But she kind of paints a picture of what that experience was like for many of the girls, or I should say the cis women, or as Lenny likes to say, just the women that were on the team prior to Leah transitioning and coming over. So let me.
We were told that Leah swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male. sum up the university's response, we, the women, were the problem, not the victims. We were expected to conform, to move over, and shut up. Our feelings didn't matter. The university was gaslighting and fear-mongering women to validate the feelings and identity of a male. What you do not know is the experiences of the women on the University of Pennsylvania swim team. My teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Leah, a 6'4" tall biological male, fully intact with male genitalia, 18 times per week. Some girls opted to change in bathroom stalls, and others used the family bathroom to avoid this. When we tried to voice our concerns to the athletic department, we were told that Leah's swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male.
So obviously it kind of starts to reiterate itself there.
Yeah. Don't worry, Nesto, put the video in where.
That absolutely broke my heart.
Yeah.
Like listening
I mean,
to that.
okay. You know where I stand on a lot of this. And biologically, men are men and women are women. And, you know, a lot of this has come about due to feelings. And people just want to feel accepted. They don't want to get their feelings hurt if they're some certain kind of way. So this goes to what I was saying before about a small percentage of people are affecting the masses and forcing change to the masses. So now you have a whole swim team that's traumatized to save one person's feelings.
So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to pretend to speak onto why people are transitioning. That's what
Whatever.
I'm not going to do.
That's their personal thing. I don't care about that.
But again, that's not for anybody that's not in that experience.
And that's
to,
fine.
To comment on.
People can do whatever they want. I have no issues with that.
Sticking to, you know, how it impacts other people and to your perspective, you have your feelings about it. I think I was pretty honest when I discussed the Leah situation. Just the fact that they had competed at such a high level in sport for so long, the kind of muscle memory that you have as an athlete, I felt that no matter what, it was going to be unfair. That was before we even got into the locker room situation. You know, I think that there's ways to address the scenario. I'm absolutely outraged that these individuals who were recruited and who were brought in to be members of this team before Leah ever decided to make that transition, were then kind of pushed to the wayside, to your point, or I should say, in the name of inclusion, right? And again, when UPenn was doing this, it was uncharted water. If you fast forward, it really was. It was uncharted water. There had never been another D1 athlete competing at that level. I don't think that it transitioned that readily, or I should say that kind of like on the spot. There may have been athletes prior to that had transitioned or were presenting long before they made it to college. This is a person who literally used to travel with their male counterparts. Like some of these people came into school at the same year, only Leah was a boy and they were girls.
Yeah, but how do you pick and choose what topic you're going to say, oh, well, that's not okay for a transgendered person to participate in this?
My bigger issue is this, the fact that if as a university you decide to accommodate this individual, right? Again, uncharted waters, this is the stance that you would like to take, right? You think that this is what's best for your athletic program. Again, I'm not going to be mad at them.
Why didn't they force him to?
It's not about forcing, but why do we have to force any? Like, here's the deal, though. Like,
accommodations are things that you do to make someone happy or feel comfortable or whatever. So why wouldn't you just accommodate a transgendered person by giving them their own changing space?
Well, and again,
instead of.
So again, I'm not going to say, I don't like using the word force. These girls chose, and it's funny because the first comment under this video is, do you feel the same way when you change in front of a lesbian? And I find that, you know, That's such a loaded question to ask in this situation, but it's also an interesting question to ask. Like, if you have gay teammates, right? Do you feel awkward, or do you feel, insecure or intimidated because you think that they may or may not be, checking you out? Like, I don't know, because that's one of the things that most gay people say. Like, I'm not looking at every female that walks in a room. Like, or
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't think
looking at
women
every
would
man.
have as big a problem with it as guys would.
But again, that speaks to your own issues with homosexuality in that situation.
No, I just think, I mean, if you went to the Dolphins locker room
That's
and
being very
everybody was
presumptuous,
changing-
and you're thinking that every gay man is going to want to check you out. That's not the case.
Sorry, that's not what I said.
No,
I said
but that's-
the people that were not gay would feel
But that's the
more
point.
uncomfortable.
But that's the point that I'm making. That's what I'm saying is why it's a loaded question. Is that it's kind of like a scenario that gay people have been faced with for a very long time, and their argument is always like, I'm not trying to check out or come on to every female that I see. You know what I mean? It's like, if I'm not attracted to lesbians. I can say, oh, that's a beautiful woman, but I'm not sexually, especially if I know that, like, there's no sexual attraction there, right? Like, that's just not my jam. I don't think that gay men, for the most part, are running around just being overly sexually attracted to straight men, like, and wanting to come on to them. So, I mean, I understand where the girl was coming from when asking the question, but back to the university, I don't disagree with them prioritizing the majority of the swimmers over one individual who made a decision at the last minute to live their to live as their authentic self, and that means to be competing as a transgender athlete. I'm not living the experience, but I would think that I would be grateful for the opportunity, because in many situations and in many states, Leah would not have been able to be a member of the UPenn women's swim team, right? Because Leah was transgender. Like, there are states that have laws on the books that do not allow this. And now, as a result of situations like this and testimonies like this, FINA, which is the governing body that is over swimming, has negated. They've said no more transgender athletes unless you transitioned at the age of 12 and can, obviously, especially for a trans female athlete, like, you have to be able, it's the hormone level. I want to say it's like at 2.5 nanoliters or whatever of testosterone. And obviously a lot of people are saying that's unfair because there's so many laws on the books now that ban, gender affirming care and the hormones that are necessary to transition for young people, especially people as young as 12. But these are the rules that they're operating by.
I know. Well, I'm not a big fan of that either.
Not a big fan of what?
Of kids
transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
before they're
here's the
adults.
crazy thing to me, though. When I hear the word transition, and this could be just my own ignorance, when I hear transition, I feel like you have fully transitioned, right? So if you were going from male to female, that means you have been taking hormones. You're probably, getting your boobies done. You're probably, well, I'm going to be honest. When I heard transition, I assume that you've had your genital
junk removed.
And obviously, I don't think that any of those things should be done until you're an adult. Hormones, I do believe you should have access to hormone blockers. I'm not opposed to, from the research and the conversations that I've had, because it's just, especially when you're going from male to female, if you go through puberty as a young boy, it's virtually irreversible in the sense of what you can do to feminize yourself. You know what I mean? That was one of the things that Missy pointed out to us. The growth spurts, the depth of the voice, the Adam's apple, like, it's a much more tumultuous process to transition. But I didn't realize that Leah was still walking around with a whole binga. You know what I mean? I didn't realize she had a penis. And that could definitely be intimidating as a female.
I'm curious what percentage of transgendered females
have had everything
are
done.
post-op.
It's very expensive. So you could be right. I know you think that there's probably more that are not than are. And obviously, because I don't know the level to which insurance covers things like this. You could be very right. I don't know those numbers. But if you tell me that you're transitioned, I, in my brain, just automatically assumed you were transitioning. You know what I mean? Like, that was gone. These are here, and bada boom, bada bing. Like, obviously, it was a process, and that simplifies it. So I wasn't aware that Leah still had, again, male genitalia. And I would just think that coming into this new group of individuals that are saying, hey, this is ground, we're all kind of walking through this blind right now. Wouldn't you do anything in your power to make them feel comfortable? I don't know. Like, if you really want to be one of the girls, wouldn't you do what you need to do to make them feel okay? So if you know that you're bringing discomfort to the situation, why wouldn't you just say, guys, I get it 100%.
Because
I'm going to go change. And I'm not trying to place blame because I don't know what those
no,
conversations
but I mean, that's where a lot of people are coming from, is the entitlement of this. It doesn't matter how everybody else feels. It doesn't matter.
But
It's how one person feels.
But you realize that there's a lot of trans individuals that don't come from a place of entitlement. Like, there are trans individuals that are upset about conversations like this.
I understand that completely. I understand. Listen, everybody is their own person. But the point is, do you want to, walk into a lady's bathroom, sit down on a toilet, look at the stall next door and see feet pointing in that direction and someone peeing?
Yeah, and
do you know, is that what you want to see in a lady's bathroom?
We had this conversation though, and I think most of them probably sit down and push their pee-pee in the toilet if they still have one. But on the flip side of that, what about a trans man? Have you seen those pictures?
I don't necessarily want that either.
That's what I'm saying. When you're watching somebody walk in tatted up with a full beard and some big, quarter gauges in their ears, and you're swearing that is a man walking in behind your 8 or your 10-year-old daughter, or even as a female, I'm going to be way more intimidated by that than seeing some feet pointing in the wrong direction. So long as there's not a head underneath the stall, peeking at me, we're good. Feeling like a whole man is walking into a bathroom behind me? That's a different situation. Do you know what I mean? But in 2023, in many places, that's exactly what, again, women are faced with, because there's laws on the books that state, that you cannot use the bathroom that you identify with. You have to use, the bathroom of the sex you were assigned at birth. I'm a big fan of what is that? Gender.
Yeah, but are women who transition to men as scary to women as men who transition to women? Do you know what I mean?
A man transitioning to why would that's not scary to me.
In a bathroom situation.
No, because she looks like a woman. She looks like a woman. She's in there peeing because she hasn't had her pee-pee cut off. That's a different, that doesn't scare me so long as she's not pushing me into a corner. Somebody that looks like a man following me into a bathroom, if I'm at a rest stop, and I walk into a rest stop in Florida where you have to use the bathroom you were assigned at birth, and I'm at one of these places on the turnpike, and a trans man walks into the bathroom behind me, I'm probably going to be way more freaked out than some of
Let me just go one step further. I think the statistics of male sex crimes, rapes against women is much higher if you're a man, correct? Like, women raping women or women raping men is not a very high.
Well, first of all, those you can't even talk about stats like that because men don't usually report whether or not they've been raped. So but what is I don't understand what your point is.
My point is
you're making the argument
that a man who transitions to a woman is probably more likely than a woman who transitions to a man.
What, to rape a woman? What are you talking about?
I'm just saying.
What? Then what you're alluding to is people using transgenderism as a front for being a predator. Like, that's what you're saying. Like, and that's a completely different conversation. I don't think
Okay.
Leah Thomas is walking into a locker room with the intention of wanting to bang down her teammates. That's not
don't
at
know.
all what I think was going on.
I feel you, but I'm just saying in
Yeah,
general.
but that's but that again is part of that fear-mongering narrative. Sticking to what this young lady said, why I feel for her is because there's just a penis. Some girls don't want to see random penises. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like some of these girls might have been virgins. It's not about being fearful that their teammate is going
How about their
to assault them.
fucking school told them, hey,
Yeah, but
suck it up, buttercup.
It's not their entire school. It's the administration, because I'm sure there's plenty of people that are on these young women's side.
Yeah, but the
So,
administration and the
But
school.
I'm talking about it from where
That's
again,
supposed to protect your kids. Force them to do this.
they didn't. You're saying force. Once again, there were bathroom stalls that they could change in. They didn't actively tell Leah she needed to change in the family stall, which is something that they could have done, or they could have assigned a separate locker. Like, do you remember the movie G.I. Jane? Right? Remember when Demi Moore first got onto the base?
Yeah.
They gave her separate barracks, right? Like, she had separate everything, and she was like, well, I'll never be one of them if I can't. I got to share, same bed, same head, whatever the saying was. I can understand the camaraderie that happens in a locker room, but if it comes to changing, I'm not happy with the school's decision, but I'm more disappointed in Leah as a teammate. If you know you're making some of your teammates uncomfortable, right, in this very kind of murky situation that not everybody, like, this is, again, this is uncharted territory for a lot of people. Why wouldn't you just, quote unquote, take one for the team and change in a bathroom? Like, why, or have the conversations with these young ladies? I mean, I would just.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
That makes me sad. And again, I don't know what
It
those
makes
conversations.
me feel like he might have been a little self-centered.
Yes, but I almost wonder too.
And not giving a fuck about the rest of the
well,
people.
and that, again, that's what it does sound that way. And that to me is, again, to your point, coming from that kind of entitled space. No different than the fact that I feel they could have waited until they had graduated to fully transition. I'm not saying don't present or don't talk about it, but when you're competing in sports at that level, why would you wait until your last year? You know what I mean? And all of a sudden make this decision. None of us are Leah Thomas, but listening to this young woman talk about this, like, it's enough that we have to deal with predatory, doctors, like what the U.S. women's gymnastics team had to deal with, and the students, and the gymnasts at whatever it was, the University of Michigan or wherever he, you know what I'm talking about, Nacer. But now, when we're having all of these open dialogues about, women and setting boundaries and being comfortable and all of these things and using your voice and speaking up, what she says at the end of that testimony is very poignant when she's saying, we were basically pushed aside for another man, and
yeah,
that's where I think a lot of the argument comes from.
That's why a lot of these women are speaking up and saying, doesn't it bother you that men are now making decisions for women?
Well, what bothers me beyond that is the fact that as somebody who considers himself an ally, like, I find myself between a rock and a hard place, right? Because I feel like everybody is entitled to live as their true, authentic self. Hearing the conversations and the testimony, and again, doing your own research and talking to doctors and talking to psychologists.
Your true, authentic self, okay? I totally believe in that. Okay, live to be your true, authentic self. Okay, but if you choose to be your true, authentic self, and it forces you to stand out in a crowd, you have to accept that. You have to accept that. People who have face tattoos get looked at kind of weird when they walk into place. And what? And they didn't choose to transition?
They chose to live as they didn't choose to be born in the wrong body or as the wrong sex.
Look at Dennis Rodman.
He loves every bit of that, though.
Yes.
That's a walking choice that Dennis makes every single day. But if Dennis was trans, he might tell you, I didn't choose to be born as a 7-foot-tall basketball-playing man. Like, I would have preferred to have been a 4'11" Carmen Electra.
Everybody's dealt a hand in life, and you play it.
They are, but you can't compare face tattoos, which somebody goes out and knowingly just plucks on their face to being born a way that feels different than how you feel inside, right? Like, again, if you haven't experienced it, you cannot speak to it.
Nope.
But there are ways to minimize some of that standing out in the crowd that you're talking about, right? And part of that is the treatment that we allow younger people to get earlier in life, right? Especially when you're talking about transgender women. I mean, there are some women who are on the more masculine scale, that are very comfortable not transitioning and just identifying as a more, masculine woman or as non-binary, and maybe they use an ace bandage and they tape their tatis down, or, sometimes they just cut their hair short. I think it's easier for women to present as male in many situations than it is for a man to present as female, especially when you're talking about height, the size of your hands, and you're talking about gender norms and what people expect of women or expect from, just the perception of what feminine is. I think women have a little bit more of a sliding scale when we identify more masculine than men do. Like if a man is just well put together, right? And effeminate, he's automatically.
What are the statistics of
gay.
women transitioning to men and men transitioning to women?
I don't know, Lenny.
It's just I'm curious to find out because I've seen personally.
Do you know why
more,
though? Yeah, but do you know
more male to female than I have.
You know why, Len?
Female to male.
Because that's what your algorithm is.
I'm talking about on my phone. I'm talking about walking around South Florida.
How would you know? Again, it's an easier transition from female to male. And can I tell you something? There's a lot.
You're telling me I wouldn't know if that guy was a girl?
Let me tell you. If the person presenting as a man was actually female, I think you'd have a tough time. I think in certain situations.
I'd like to meet one that I couldn't pick out.
Len, just walking down the street, I'm sure you've probably passed by quite a few.
I mean, I know.
Did you ever see the movie?
I know a lot of lesbians that are the boys, that are the man in the relationship. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of them.
Yep.
I play pool with one. I mean.
But what I'm saying to you is, it's much easier for a woman to get away with that androgynous. I just think it's easier. It's not about long hair. It's not about effeminate features. It's not about there are women who, as they get older, develop beards. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be an ass. It's just true. I think it's easier to, I could probably
it's genetics
pass, but it
mainly Greek women.
Mainly Greek women? I mean, there's a lot of hairy people out there, let me tell you, but that wouldn't surprise me, although I know quite a few Greek women that don't have beards. Italian too. I'm all of the above. I mean, hey, that's what laser's here for.
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
But I also think that because male to female is just less accepted and is more quote unquote shocking to the culture, I don't think people have as big an issue with women who want to be men. This country, society takes a much bigger issue with men who want to be female, period. That has been for years. We've always had masculine women.
I don't necessarily feel like people care what you want to do with your body. I don't care if you want to be. I don't care if you want to be a female. What I do care about...
We wouldn't have the legislation that we have if people didn't care about what you want to do with your body.
That's religion being inputted in other things.
Okay, so then there are plenty... you have to admit, there are plenty of people who absolutely care what individuals do with their body. Okay.
But the chances of them running into someone, because a lot of this legislation is in, probably some of the more red, not filled states, population-wise. But... the point is now it's becoming, hey, look, best swimmer in the country. Oh no, that was a dude. Now it's a woman. Mm-hmm. I gotta share.
Get beat by women.
I gotta share the bathrooms with whoever. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Listen, just eliminate men's and women's bathrooms, and we all just share the same fucking bathrooms. Mm-hmm. If that's what it's gonna be, why have two different bathrooms?
I mean, some places don't.
you do believe that biologically men are men and women are women, correct? Biologically.
Yeah.
Okay. So at what point does it change? At what point do all of these things, we have men's and women's bathrooms?
No. So biologically,
and we have family bathrooms.
Okay, that's cool. Biologically, if you're talking about the parts that we're born with, chromosomes, whatever. We sat here and had somebody explain this to us, though, that literally they have started to do neurological tests, and you can see brains that fire in a more masculine or feminine way. And in transgender individuals, they are seeing a correlation between the way that their brains fire and operate, and it truly backing up how they feel. Like, okay, so you're born biologically male, but when we test your neurological functions, you operate on a more feminine female scale, right? And this is the most. I said you're born a male.
Yeah, I heard what you
your
said.
brain.
I heard what you said.
So it's
that's fine. But if you want to use that as a study, you need to get into a million other brains. Did Einstein's brain function the same as mine? Probably not. Did Tesla's brain function the same as mine? Probably not.
But if you're talking about masculine and feminine, no. You don't.
But how can you go to masculine?
That's what these people do. You and I are not the scientists that are doing it, but they are creating the technology that can, in fact, do that. So yes, Einstein, when it comes to certain masculine things, unless he felt inside like he wanted to transition and never told us, and let's be honest, who the fuck knows? Geniuses are out there. The same thing with Sigmund Freud and the rest of these, people. Mm-hmm. Like, just from a masculine and feminine standpoint and how a male brain and a female brain work, what they're saying is they have seen a correlation that backs up, the trans community in saying, like, no, our brain operates different. Like, I might physically look this way, but my brain operates like a female. Or if I present as I'm born as a biological woman, but I feel like a man inside, like my brain operates as a man. Like, we're getting to that place, and there's, very valid science behind it. So, that whole telling people how they want to know, and there's repercussions. It's like, I don't know, maybe we'll find out in another 20 years that it's the fucking food. I don't know, that it's the pesticides and everything else that was literally changing chromosomes and genetic, and that wouldn't surprise me. But right now, that's not what we're talking about. Right now, we have a very real situation in this country that is dividing people, in a monumental way. And obviously, there's a lot of people that don't like change and don't want to see things getting reworked. And now we're seeing more of these governing bodies, especially in the sports world, putting down legislation like FINA, right? Where if you didn't transition by a certain point, then sorry, you can't compete. There's a lot of different organizations that are contemplating whether or not to implement trans-specific categories. And then people are like, well, that's not inclusive. Okay, but we have the Paralympics. We have different outlets for people with, different is disabilities even a word that you can use anymore?
No, I'd say skill sets.
Well, that sounds ableist, right? I don't even know. And that's the other thing.
You
know me, Len, I'm here for everybody, and I try to be a great defender, but I find myself between a rock and a hard place.
Because you can't be here for everybody. You cannot make everybody happy.
No, I mean, but you
can't.
You can't support everybody.
You took one person and you made a bunch of girls miserable. One person and you made a bunch of girls miserable. That should be enough of a case study to say, hey, maybe we need to take the one person and try and make them as happy as we can without disrupting the rest of the fucking world. That's all I'm saying. That's exactly that scenario at Penn State.
Mm-hmm. It's not Penn State, it's UPenn.
UPenn, whatever.
That's not a whatever. Big difference.
Whatever. Sorry, Penn State. I'm sure you have the same fucking policies.
They had Sandusky. They had their own
division.
Yeah,
no. Again.
So, whatever. But like I said, as an ally, it makes it very difficult because I was also a competitor, and I'm also here for my women. And that's become the space that we have been backed into is, if you want to support trans rights, do you have to bite your tongue about the things that you feel are unfair?
But trans rights, I mean, what rights are they looking for? Are they looking for the right to use a ladies' room if they haven't had their surgery, their full transition? Are they looking for that right?
What is that? But again, like I don't take issue with that. I have no problem with that. You wanting to change in a locker room with a bunch of your teammates that are voicing concern, that to me is just a testament to the individual, because I would want to do whatever I could do to make you feel more comfortable. Like, so
I get it. And a lot of
I take no issue with a trans woman coming into the bathroom at Hard Rock Stadium with me and using the stall next to me. That has no impact on my life whatsoever. The same way you shouldn't take issue with a trans man walking into the bathroom behind you and going into the bathroom to take a piss. Probably not going to pee at the urinal, but to take a piss in a stall, right? Like that to me is that's not the conversation. Now, if we're all peeing out in the open, which thankfully being a woman, we don't have to do, like there should always be, I think, a non-gender specific bathroom. I think that's the new place to go to. I like individual stalls personally anyway. I'd rather not hear what you're doing right next door to me. So if we can get doors on everybody's shit, like in roofs, and just everybody's got an individual stall, that'd be the way to do it in my personal opinion. That saves everybody a whole lot of argument and aggravation and this conversation. From a sports perspective, from a competitor's perspective, like I do take issue with somebody being able to compete at an elite level for that much of their life, knowing what I know, again, about the type of commitment, the time that you put in, how you've developed your body, having gone through puberty, where you're at, and then just trying to say like, oh, I'm deconditioned now. I'm like, abso-fucking-lutely not. Shut up. You didn't go from being 50th in your main event to being number one if there's not a difference, right? Like, Now, Leah did get beat by women. I told you that. She got beat by women in other events, which I think is fucking great. And that may sound shady or salty or whatever, but I think right there you can see the difference in the competition.
Lost the breaststroke.
But I'm sure that one has been said before. But I feel bad because somebody's going to be like, you're not a real ally if you don't just stand blind support. And it's like, that's frustrating. But that, again, that goes back to a conversation we've had on previous episodes, Len, where it's like we're forced to be all this way or all that way.
Yeah,
it's
no
like,
middle ground.
Why can't I have or take issue with certain parts of this, right? Like, I don't find a problem with, a girl wanting to play on a boys soccer team, or if you're at that age and you're fucking 6 and 8 and just having co-ed teams when kids are younger, and then as you get more developed, I don't know. Like, but again, you are limiting an entire group of individuals, and I don't know how many it is. I really don't. From a more elite level of competition if they don't have access to gender affirming care by a certain point in time, because there's legislation being passed in particular. I mean, I'm not speaking about outside of this country, but in this country in particular. And then there's many governing bodies, like the International Olympic Committee wants inclusion, but they're basically putting that in the hands of the individual sports governing bodies. So gymnastics gets to choose how they approach it. Swimming gets to choose how they approach it. Obviously, track and field gets to choose how they approach it. And they've dealt with this in the past with quote unquote cisgender women that were just born with higher levels of testosterone. We've had a couple. One was actually banned from international competition. She's an incredible sprinter, but she had testosterone levels of the elite level male athletes, and she was like, "I was born this way. There's nothing I can do about it." So she had to go on testosterone inhibitors in order to be able to compete. And people still complained about that. Like, I'm not here for the bitching about it just from woe is me. I don't want the competition, right? But when you have an obvious unfair advantage and it is minimizing, female athletes, there's a reason why we had to split the shit into male and female, right? We know this. A, we weren't given access, and B,
it's men's and women's sports.
But
I don't know. I saw some clip of a male soccer team playing a female soccer team. Did you see that clip?
It'd be interesting to see Team USA.
Elite female soccer team, and they just annihilated them.
Yeah, I don't know how true that would be in the U.S. I know our U.S. women's national team is pretty G in comparison to the U.S. men's team, but shade, no shade. At least they were for a very long
I think
time.
I'll save the clip. I'll show you after.
Okay, well, we can do that. But yeah, I mean, I want to see women get their shine.
I feel you.
I'm a feminist in that way. Do I want to see people have access? If that's how you identify, and if you've been running with the girls since you're 12, and you've been on hormone blockers, you never went through male puberty, and you have done everything in your power, and all of your teammates have always seen you as a woman or as a female. I don't know. I think that's a different conversation, but I think that's down the road because I don't know that we're there yet, right? Like this is all new. This is all new science. This is all fairly new medicine, in the sense of mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how people will feel about it in another 10 years when you really start to see some of these younger youth athletes, right, that are going to be faced with these decisions. I know parents want to see their kids get scholarships. I know that people have competed and who have given their blood, sweat, and tears to a sport want a fair shot, right? I can understand the frustration with the young ladies that were swimming, in D1 college athletics and the NC2A the year that Leah decided, hey, I want to join the team. I can understand all of those things, and I don't think that makes me less of an ally. But there are people out there that will tell you, like, you suck, like you're no longer on our team.
Pick a side.
And that's crazy to me because, they're talking about feminism and, and again, when you look at it that way, it is kind of ironic that even for people who are out here trying to break down walls and blow through ceilings as women, we are still fundamentally accommodating people who were born male.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Y'all are a bunch of fucking pains in the asses.
I said to somebody today that said, if you put 10 men and 100 women on a...
No, it's you if you
on
put,
an island.
Put 10 if you put...
Put
yeah.
10 men, 100 women on an island in 100 years.
It wasn't even that. It was 10 and 10. It was
you'll
10
have a
and 10.
flourishing community if you put,
No, it was 10 and 10. It wasn't at 10 and 100. It was literally if you put 10 men and 10 trans women on an island and you come back in 20 years, even or in 100 years,
you'll have 20 skeletons.
Yeah, you'll have 20 skeletons. If you put 10 men and 10 women
on an island.
Or no, I think somebody said even if you put 10 men and 10 trans men, you would still have you would still have a thriving community because you could reproduce. You know what I'm saying? So I get that. It's just it's a frustrating conversation, and it makes me feel, I don't even want to say disillusioned, but like I just feel bad because trying to be, pro women and also trying to stand, tall in the paint for the LGBTQIA plus community and defend, trans men and trans women, which I will do vehemently, to find yourself between a rock and a hard place when it comes to situations like this. And you have,
I think situations like this are setting back their cause.
Yeah,
I really do. I really do. So the empowerment, great. The inclusion, great. But you cannot take 1, 2, 5, 10% of anything in this country and push it on the other 90% and not expect it to get squashed. Mm-hmm. That's just the way it is. It's a democracy. It's the way the world works, Kimmy. If you have 10% of the weak people here and 90% of the power people against them, you're gonna get squashed.
I just don't understand why people can't. Again, like it's this no middle ground thing, though, and I'm not even talking about your argument. I'm just saying, for the trans community, right? How far would it take the cause to take a step back and say, you know what? Why don't we have our own competitive realm, right? Like, why don't we start here? And who knows? At some point, maybe our cis men and cis women, or biologically born men and biologically born women who continue to identify that way. Maybe they'll join in some of those competitions, right? But in the meantime, why? In order to be able to, it just means more scholarships. Right now, we're not fighting for the same
I
ones.
feel you.
It just, so again, it's about compromise. So like, how do we move the conversation forward without it being completely divisive? And
Are you gonna be able to field a team of D1 transgendered people? A team? You're talking about starting a whole thing. I mean, it's difficult because again, you're in a very low percentage of people.
I get that, yeah.
So you're not gonna have a trans D1 swim team.
Or what if it's non-binary? Like, what if it's
That's fine, yeah.
So what
If
if you're just like
open,
point,
open. That's
open category.
That would be fine because you're gonna get the guys are gonna come in and try and dominate it, and the women are not gonna try. So it's gonna be basically dudes swimming against transgendered
women.
Whatever, transgendered. Period.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's an open class, I'm fine with that.
Shying away from it, and I think that you would have some people that would be, willing to get in the mix for the sake of progress, right? I think as far as the locker room situation goes, like to me, if you're the one, I understand there's always been one, but here's the thing though, Lenny, and it's like we've been here before with different circumstances. Like, do you think that Jackie Robinson was welcomed in his locker room?
I understand that.
And I hate to put that because
I understand that.
Somebody is going to come for my neck even over Paris Jackie Robinson.
Yes. Yeah. And they are, because we're talking about biology for most people. For most people, it's just biology. And, again, and I had this conversation with someone else recently. There's solutions. But no one wants a solution, because if you solve these problems, you will then not have anything to fight about.
Then you have to focus on the economy.
You'll have to focus on the real shit that's going on.
Well, yeah, that's
so,
the economy.
I mean, realistically, no one would have ever noticed if they put family bathrooms, if every community in their new housing or their new development,
or just gender
just a family bathroom. It doesn't have to say. If you put gender on it, Kimmy, it becomes something. If you put a family bathroom, which means anybody could go in, it's open to the public.
No, but again, Lenny, there should be
gender neutral. Okay, whatever. Male, female bathroom.
Yes, and I've seen them. They have them in Seattle, and they literally have.
Yeah, they have them in Vegas.
Male,
what was that one that we had? Oh, the sign. The sign had a
half male, half female.
Yeah, I was cracking up.
I love it.
I was cracking up, but that to a religious person might throw them off, whereas a family bathroom wouldn't.
But they don't have. But guess what? But now we're catering to that person. They don't have to use that bathroom. But to the people.
But you're not catering to that person. You're catering to the rest of the people.
Yeah, but your religion is not supposed to impact my life. Like that's a whole other.
Yeah, but your gender is not supposed to impact my life.
My gender is protected.
You can't say no. Why? Why is your gender protected? You're a female. I'm a male. That's protected.
It's in the Constitution.
Yeah. But like, changing your gender is not.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about, and religion is protected, okay? Freedom of religion.
Yeah, but your religion cannot impose on my freedoms.
Yes, but your gender transition.
How is my gender transition imposing on yours?
Because the sign bothers me. That's what people are going after.
No. A sign bothering you has nothing to do with
what?
Your actual freedom.
See, now this is why there's no compromise, okay? This is why there's no fucking compromise. Because if you just had family bathrooms, nobody would say shit.
Or if you just minded
everybody
your
wants to see
and let
that
the people that wanted to use let the trans people but I could say the exact same thing. If you just minded your business and didn't look under the stall to see which way the feet next to you were pointing, you'd have no fucking idea if there was a trans man or a trans woman sitting.
I feel you.
So it's the same argument across the board. To me, I'm just saying I don't give a if now we're catering to because you're okay with catering to religion.
Most men are against this because they know that men are fucking creeps.
Men are creeps.
Yeah.
Men who identify as women, maybe not so creepy.
How do you know?
Maybe not because.
How do you know?
Like you said, men, they don't their brains don't fire the same way.
I don't know.
They don't fire the same way.
I don't know. We better wrap this up.
Anyway.
Before we go deeper.
It's not about before we go deeper, but that you are a shining example the same way I am of why there's no compromise apparently, because you're okay with catering to a certain group of people's predispositions and I'm okay with catering to another group of people's because you agree more with
I'm
No,
looking, Kimmy.
just said it, Lenny.
I'm looking for a solution that makes
You're
everyone
not
happy.
though, but okay, but
Why would the sign on the bathroom? One sign offends 90% of the people.
And it doesn't
One
offend
sign,
90%
the
of the
other
people.
sign,
eventually
it's 90% of the people.
No.
It's 90% of the general public is not LGBTQ. Okay?
That's actually not true. But
Whatever
okay.
the percentage
It's
is,
not true.
we talked about it here.
Yeah, but that's not true. You're
Okay,
saying
so
90. You
what's-
just pull
all right,
numbers out of your
All right,
ass.
70%. 51%.
But guess what? Even the people that are not a member of that community still don't mind. They don't care until it impacts them directly. So the sign on the thing that says, go ahead and use that bathroom, go ahead.
Why would a family bathroom offend someone who's LGBTQ?
Because to the point, Lenny, when we're talking about compromise, you're still trying to completely negate that these people exist. So if you put the little sign up there that has a man and a half a woman, at least you're acknowledging that, yes, these are members of our community. We're giving them a restroom so that they feel safe. We all feel safe.
Right.
That is at least some sort of acknowledgement that, okay, we're making progress. That's part of the compromise. If we keep it at a family thing, now you're still going, we're not comfortable with acknowledging that you exist. So do you understand at least that part of the argument?
Sure.
Okay, that was again.
I get what you're saying, but again, it's pandering to.
And you're okay with pandering to the other people?
No.
Yes.
I'm okay to,
Why is that pandering? Why is inclusion pandering? Like, again, I'm sitting here I'm compromising. I'm giving you a lot on this argument in the sense of like, no, I don't think it was right to make these young women feel the way that they felt in that locker room. That was not okay. The university definitely made a bad decision on that. And I would hope that this will be a shining example of how not to do things moving forward.
Yes.
I also think that Leah Thomas is a shitty teammate. If the people
again, to my point, it's a small percentage that is now, Las Vegas.
You're talking, but
Las Vegas is a place where people from all over this country go.
Mm-hmm. And they had what sign? They
had the half.
Yeah. Okay.
The half and a half.
Lenny, I'm making it even smaller. We're talking about you and I finding compromise because that's the whole reason why we have this podcast, correct? Mm-hmm. Was to find some sort of middle ground. I'm trying to give that to you, and as I'm giving you these things and I'm acknowledging like, okay, some things are being taken too far. I can say that even as an ally, as a woman, as somebody who I think many would, throw the label woke at or whatever. I don't claim that, but I know other people that watch this podcast certainly have identified me as that. Mm-hmm. But you're not willing to do the same when we talk about.
What do you mean I'm not willing to do the same? I am.
You're using words like pandering and, because no, I'm trying to make everybody happy, but I'm sitting here giving you the inch and trying to see where you're coming from, and I can understand how the folks on the other side of this conversation.
But why is that sign different than the locker room? Why is that sign
It's not.
different than the locker room?
I'm telling you right now that should have been a situation that happened in the locker room. It's the same thing when you go into.
No, I'm asking you why that sign is not the same situation as the locker room. Why is that sign not Leah?
What are you talking about? Because that space is supposed to be an include. It's the same thing in the locker room. They should have gender neutral locker rooms.
I'm not saying they shouldn't have bathrooms that are separate.
No, but you want them to identify it as a family bathroom. The family bathroom,
or
just how about gender neutral? Why not just say gender neutral?
Yeah, or just male female. But that's not really how the sign reads.
No, because
that's not what it looks like.
Because you want to focus, but you're okay. But your whole argument was, if we keep it family, then everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Everybody's not happy because these people are still looking for some sort of sign that they're included, that there's a level of inclusion happening in society because they are real, they do exist, and that's not ever going to change, and they've existed for all time. So by giving them the sign, you're still saying, we don't want you in our bathrooms, but here's a space for you because we know that you exist. We're not completely comfortable at this point with a complete kind of integration, but here's a sign that anybody can use, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of it being separate but equal, we're saying now here's a place that anybody can choose to use.
It's like with having their own league. It's the same thing. They have their own bathroom. They have their own league. It just upsets a lot of people in this country.
But guess what? So
And the
move forward,
majority of this country is religious. The majority of this country follows a religion. And there's very few religions that accept any of this.
Once again, that's not supposed to play in on any of this. And that's a whole. We can have that. We can have the separation of church and state conversation.
Listen, it is the separation of church and state, except you live in a democracy. So if the democracy is 90% religious,
you keep using this really weird statistic. Like,
okay, 80,
why is
what's
your
the
thing?
difference?
Because you want it to seem like this particular group of individuals is completely on an island by themselves almost.
No,
you do.
I
like,
just
that's
want
why
to use
you
the
keep
actual
using a number like
percentages.
90. Like
Let me
you keep
just
throwing
look
out
up
90. 90 is it's a big number, Len. It's a big number. But anyway, all I'm saying is when you're talking about making progress and you're talking about, taking a step in the right direction and actual compromise, any sort of pandering to either side is not a compromise. So when you're looking at it or you're referencing it as pandering it's like, no, there's legitimate compromise. It's finding a middle ground. It's finding a way through and forward. So just saying family so that religious people feel safe and aren't offended. This is 7.1%.
Yeah. So why is 90% out of the question?
2022. And look at
80%. It didn't go up 13% in a year.
But look at Lenny, look at new studies. Look at new studies about how many younger people identify as somewhere on the Kinsey scale, that identify as bisexual, that identify as whatever. It's much more than 7.1%. And where's your stat from? Who's that from?
It's everything on Google. It says the same thing.
Everything on Google.
I just Googled it. I'm not.
Okay.
10% of the U.S. population.
I mean,
this is NPR.
Okay, but we were talking about, and then you're in your religion stat.
I'm just.
No.
How many people are religious in the United States? Okay.
Religious. That's a very broad term because you have people that are Buddhist. You have people that are Wiccan. Like you have people that are satanic. You have people that are atheist.
Follow a mainstream. Right? Is that
what's mainstream? Christianity?
Yeah, one of the top three.
Muslim,
One of the top three.
Muslim.
Religion in the USA. 69%.
Okay, so 70. Not your 90.
70%.
Okay. Not your 90 though. Not your 90. So 70%
No, the 90% comes from the 10% LGBTQ and the 90% that's not.
Yeah, but guess what? There's 90% that are not, but there's a whole lot of us that are accepting.
Fine. And apparently that's the other 20%.
What do you
67%
I'm not religious.
70% are religious.
Hold the fuck up. So what are you saying? You're not religious if you are accepting of the LGBTQIA plus community? Absolutely not true. There are plenty of mainstream religions that actually have open doors and welcome the LGBTQ in. I mean, it's a cause for some conflict right now amongst one of them, or multiple, whatever. But like that was wild. And how dare you say that?
Just trying to come up with some percentages.
Well, yeah, but then you're trying to say that people, you can't be religious and also be accepting. That's exactly what religion teaches us.
No, I'm just saying that there's a lot of people who are not accepting. And
those are called bigots.
Religion is one of the top things that's not accepting of others.
That's bigotry. It's also why religion is the opiate of the masses. They also don't like women to have voices or wear their hair out in a lot of places and feel it's okay to stone a woman in the middle of the street if she disrespects a man, and that can be a million things, So
that's the largest religion in the world.
We also live in the United States of America, right?
Like that's why I use the U.S.
A place where you weren't supposed to be persecuted for your religious beliefs, a place where people fled to escape religious persecution, a reason why, there's supposed to be separation of church and state, which can mean many things to many people, as I've learned because I've done my research from some of the comments. You can take it as
there's a lot of different things, but
literal definition.
Like I said, in Utah, if you're a Mormon, you got a better chance of getting elected. It's just based on the population.
Yeah, and people who move to Utah know that.
No, I'm just saying.
And then they also have a lot of Mormons that are sitting. And anyway, I'm not gonna drag anybody's faith or what they do sexually or any of those things. But listen, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot more conversations to be had around this particular issue. And hopefully there will be more compromise and more movement forward from everyone. That includes the trans community. That includes allies. That includes folks who just vehemently disagree with the entire idea of people being born in the wrong body, right? And there's a lot of those individuals out there. It's going to take religious folks coming to the foreground and going, hey, you can't sit here and say God makes no mistakes and then vilify a group of people, especially when many of those individuals are religious in and of themselves. So, again, I just hope that we can do more talking and
Me too.
ostracizing and pushing each other into corners, because I don't like being backed into a corner and being made to choose, which group I want to stand up and defend on any given day. It's frustrating. Yeah? Okay. And I guess I would think there are other people out there that agree. But anyway, wrapping it up. We set a timer for 30 minutes and it did not go 30 minutes. It went over. But
a little.
like, subscribe, share, follow. Please leave your comments. I'm ready for whatever y'all throw our way on this episode.
We're on Rumble too.
No, I don't even know what is Rumble. I don't even know what that is. I'm so out of
look
the
it up.
There's
It's
way
like
too many.
I don't know what it's like a YouTube. Yeah, it's like a YouTube.
It's another one.
YouTube for kooks.
Oh. Okay, so it's kind of
it's just
okay,
more open platform.
Mm-hmm. What's the other one? Like Discord. Like there's different versions of Twitter and like.
Yeah, I mean there's
another.
Twitter's
one,
more open now, but it's less censored. Rumble.
Got you.
So.
Oh God, they must love us there. They love you there. They don't love me. That's for sure. But anyway, like, subscribe, share, follow. We will see you for episode 64 of the ManTFup podcast.
Peace.